My mom often warned me not to talk to strangers without her presence. She also told me that some people were very mean and good at lying. But one day, what my mother feared the most happened. It was the year 2009. I was an 8-year-old boy. On hot summer days, my family, my older sister, my mom, and dad went to rest at my late grandfather's house, which was located in a small village an hour away from our hometown. My grandfather had been dead for a year, and the house looked abandoned until my mother tidied it up and my father mowed the entire huge yard. Now I could freely go out into the yard and play one-on-one with the ball of my Barcelona soccer team, which my sister never played with. While my father was mowing the grass in the yard, I was not allowed to go outside because there might be a Gyrza snake lurking in the big grass, which would not be too surprising in the region where this house stood. But now that Dad had tidied up the yard, I was free to go out and play. My mother only warned me about one thing: not to talk to strangers, even if they told me they were our relatives. I've always believed her, and I wasn't going to do it any other way, but during a ball game, it accidentally fell over the other side of the fence and buried itself in a meter of mud near the track. Most of the time, no one walked outside. Only 2 neighbors lived around, and they were also old, and a car could only drive down this track once a day. So I made the worst decision of my life and decided not to bother my parents by retrieving the ball and going out myself. It wasn't a difficult task. I just needed to open a small gate door to get to the other side of the fence, which I did. I ran pretty fast with my little legs, and in no time, I was on the street. The ball was nowhere to be seen. Despite its striking blue and red colors, I still couldn't spot it in a meter of grass. And at the same time, I was careful because I was very afraid of the snakes lurking among them. I took the risk anyway. I loved this ball so much, and I wasn't going to lose it so easily. So I moved forward and started pushing it around the sides of the tall grass. The ball was still nowhere to be seen, so I was slowly losing hope and was preparing to return home disappointed. In the distance, I heard a man's voice shouting, "Hello, little boy. Are you looking for something?" I immediately looked back in horror to see a half-bald man sitting in a white van on the opposite side of this small track, smiling at me. Of course, I remembered my mother's words and did not speak to the stranger. "Excuse me, I took the ball," he said to me. "I saw how it fell, and I thought you don't need them anymore. And my little son has been dreaming of a soccer ball like this for a long time." I was scared and did not make a sound. The stranger was talking to me and smiling, so he looked very much like one of the robbers from the movie Home Alone. "Don't be afraid of me, little boy. I've lived here all my life. I was your dad's best friend when I was a kid, and we used to play soccer together," he told me. "Really?" I asked in a shy voice. It was as if the man gained my trust in a second with these words. "Really, I haven't seen your father in such a long time. Does he still drink beer so often?" he asked, smiling again in a friendly way. I shook my head, disagreeing with him. I knew it too. I knew he was strong and could easily overcome such a bad habit, he said, and smiled again, then took my ball in his hand and showed it to me. "Your parents will be worried when they find out you went out alone. Come on, grab that ball and run home. I might even come to visit you tomorrow night," he said, and held my blue ball out the window of the van so I could reach in and pick it up easily. I still hesitated. I could not fully trust a stranger who pretended to be close to me. However, I still saw no other way out. I had to go to the man, get the ball, and get back home before my parents found out about my going out. "Come on, little boy, get your pretty ball," he repeated. I moved towards him with slow steps, although my body was so tense that I was ready to run back at any moment. Finally, I approached the end of the van, and an unknown man handed me the ball and held it in his hands. At that moment, my fear disappeared because the unknown man was not behaving very strangely and did not attack me. He was just sitting behind the van wheel with one hand on the window and smiling at me. "Don't you want candy?" he asked me. I didn't make a sound and just looked at him with shy eyes. "Don't hesitate. Consider me your relative," he said, and held out a small barberry candy with his right hand, which was red but had a white wrapper. "Take the candy. I have a son your age, and he loves these candies very much," I slowly raised my hand to take the candy, but before I could even blink, the stranger put his huge hand on my small and thin arm and pulled me up. I was in a lot of pain. I think I even dislocated my arm because I heard a terrible sound. I yelled at him that it hurt and to stop, but he aggressively told me to shut up if I didn't want to lose my tongue. He reached up to the window of the van with one hand and dragged me inside. At the same time, he held his hand over my mouth so that I wouldn't scream and others couldn't hear my voice. At that time, I was no longer afraid because this man, who was politely smiling at me before, turned so rude that my whole body ached. Suddenly, the voice of another man was heard shouting from a distance, urging the assailant to stop. At first, I couldn't understand it well, but then I recognized that the voice belonged to my father. He quickly rushed to the unknown man's van, opened the door roughly, and threw the unknown man out of the van. It was obvious that my father looked stronger than him because the stranger was lying on the asphalt, and my father was hitting him from above. He called me to get out of the car and go into the house, which I did immediately, even though I was in shock. I immediately jumped out of the van and ran towards my house, not looking back. That day, my parents didn't scold me for disobeying their warning about strangers. Instead, they hugged me tightly, grateful that I was safe. The incident left a lasting impression on me, reminding me always to heed my parents' advice and be cautious around strangers.